So you want to get into the Mega Man X series, which, fair enough. It is one of the more, if not most, popular iterations of the franchise, and as great as Classic is, X gives you a few more options when it comes to movement and other mechanics, so it might even be the easiest for new players to get into. But where to start specifically, you may ask? The answer is X1, and I know that's not the most interesting choice. Begin at the beginning. What a concept! But even if all the games have been released at the same time with no sense of continuity, it would still be my pick. It takes the basic formula from Classic, 8 stages in whatever order, each with a unique boss and weapon to claim, followed by a linear set of final levels, while adding its own spin on things, upgrade and armor pieces, chargeable weapons, and an intro stage. Even with all that though, the original game is probably the most straightforward and beginner-friendly. While just about every armor set will have 4 parts, head, arm, chest, and foot, this is the only game where, if you miss the upgraded Buster, you'll still get it during the endgame. And with that being the harder component to snag, the wiggle room is very welcome. Being able to dash is also one of the major upgrades that separates X from classic Mega Man, and while you start off with the skill in all of the sequels, here, you're without it for at least the intro stage. While veterans will feel the omission, if you're new, this gives you a bit of time to get down the rest of the mechanics, and when you do get the foot parts, the ability is shown off. Since its capsule is impossible to miss, even if you're not the type to slap every button on the controller to see what does what, there's no chance of you not realizing you have it this way. This entry also has a lot of damage animations, making it apparent when you pick the right weapon for slaying a boss. Well, actually most X titles do that, but some of them are really obvious here, giving you a bit of guidance to put together a boss order. Plus, there's also a largely correct choice for who to take out first, Joe Penguin not only being probably the easiest to defeat, but his stage also containing the all-important foot parts that I just mentioned. While this might not be immediately obvious, he probably is the least intimidating on the stage select, and I also just kinda gave it away. The game also has a mechanic where defeating some of the bosses will cause a change to take place in another stage. This typically makes the affected stage a bit easier to deal with, so if someone's following a boss weakness order but having trouble even reaching the end of a level, this gives them an alternate way to try and tackle things. For a few other odds and ends, X1 also has the Storm Tornado, a pretty busted weapon that can be used to slam through stages for those who need the extra help, and most of the upgrades are hidden in pretty good spots. Chances are, if you see somewhere that looks tricky but possible to reach, that was likely by design and you'll find a goodie waiting for you, if you check. I don't think there's a lot of wasted space in this one. On top of all that, there's all the people who call this game perfect, and if it isn't, it's at least damn close. If you're gonna start somewhere, might as well be the one without caveats. Though speaking of, when it comes to the other games, a lot of them will throw in at least something extra to juggle. X2 having optional bosses that you're motivated to hunt down within a limited window, and upgrades hidden in some pretty wild spots, whereas X3 has ambush reinforcements, as well as feeling just kinda mean-spirited at points. X4 though gets an honorable mention because while it does have a few things that could be hard for newer players, such as this vehicle section that almost made my brother's eyes bleed, it still does a lot of what the first game does. Not only that, but it's also the first with a fully playable Zero. While I'd still recommend that people start with X since you want to get the basics down before you also have to worry about more complex movesets and needing to fight in close, knowing how to play as Zero is going to be important later on. Plus, he's just so cool. So while X1 is definitely the place to start, I think X4 would be a pretty good follow-up. It even has cheat codes if you need a bit of an extra boost. I also want to give an extra little warning to newer players. There is a massive difference in quality between the first and second X Legacy Collection. While some might have issues with X3, I do think that the first 4 X titles are some of the finest platformers ever made, and getting them all in one package is about the best purchase you can make. The second half, though, leaves a lot to be desired. X5 is about the only one I might say is a must-play, though I'd still hesitate since the game tries to do way too much and winds up feeling bloated, or at least more complicated than it needed to be. X6 and 7 are truly terrible, and X8 is pretty hit or miss with people, so even though I think it's a good game, there's no guarantee you'll feel the same. My point here is, if you're just starting out with X or Mega Man in general, the first collection is a hearty recommend, though I'd hold off on the second until you see how that pans out. If you love it and feel really invested, buy the rest. If you're kinda tepid on it, the last 4 probably ain't gonna turn things around unless you're one of the few who gets addicted to X8. And if you're somewhere in the middle, look up some reviews, see what the complaints are, maybe watch some gameplay and decide then. While I'm sure hardcores will say that I'm whining too much and that you should just play them all, I'd really hate to see people get soured on the series, expecting the second half to be as great as the first. If one series has a correct answer on where to start, I'd say it be X. So for once, and probably the only time, I'm gonna be pretty confident in my answer here. X1 is the best entry for beginners. Maybe not just for X, but for the franchise on the whole. Like I already mentioned, it builds upon the classic formula while solidifying its own style, so whether you were to go forward or backwards from here, you'd have a pretty solid leg to stand on. So to wrap things up, let me ask you, if you're a new player, was this convincing and did it help? And if you're a longtime Mega fan, do you think it's accurate, and if not, what would you suggest instead? For this one, it's gonna be really hard to convince me otherwise though. With that, thanks as always for watching, and maybe consider subscribing if you're into retro games, especially Mega Man. For everlasting peace.